What is up, you beauties? It is BatchatBegins back with another fantastic video for you all today. As you all well know, Update 7.3 just came out recently for World of Tanks Blitz, introducing some buffs and nerfs to the game, but also introducing the much anticipated Swedish heavy tank line with the Kranvagn as the pinnacle of the line. And I can't say enough about the Kranvagn as a tank in Blitz. It's got the entire package. It's got the Hulldown presence with that incredible armor. It's got the auto reloader, and it can fire single shot, making it effective at both clipping and facing targets head on. And when this tank goes hull down, there is feasibly no way of stopping it besides trying to shoot at the very tiny cupolas on the top of the tank or just flat out HEing the tank. And it is not a very effective method when this thing can just pop up and shoot you and potentially max roll you. And it does tend to high roll quite often, I've found. And this tank has very good accuracy as well, in my opinion, when sitting still, of course. When you're on the move, the accuracy does tend to be a bit wonky. But the things you want to strive to do in the Kranvagn is use the super speed boost to get into a hold down position as quickly as possible, load those 3 shells, and once you're done clipping into one target, you just simply play as a single shot tank for the majority of the rest of the game. When you do get those breaks in order to load more shells, you're obviously going to be out DPMing whatever target you're coming up against. And with that armor, you're not going to be taking much punishment in return. As you can see, I have already blocked 4k damage this game alone, just by playing in this one spot on mines. Now, by no means is the Kranvagn impenetrable. As you can see, an E3 can definitely penetrate its lower plate. You can penetrate the lower plate with the majority of tanks, and the upper plate is not so great when you're sitting on flat ground. But the turret is absolutely amazing. Sure, the turret sides aren't fantastic, and if you angle them a little bit too much towards the enemy, they're going to be able to pin it. But when you're a hull down, and they're not going to be able to see the majority of your lower hull, and they can only see a little bit of your upper hull, this thing is practically impenetrable by any tank in the game. But there are some obvious downsides to the Kranvagn. One of those downsides would be that it has the lowest DPM in the entirety of Tier 10, only just being edged out by the VK7201K. What does that mean for this tank? Well, while this tank might be very, very good at holding the enemy team back when it is supported by its allies, when this tank loses the support of its friendly team, it can be rushed down very, very easily and dealt with quite effectively. Because the only strength of this tank is when enemies are scared to go ahead and push onto it using their higher DPM. Sure, the Kranvagn can be very deadly in that burst, and it can be very deadly when it's holding, but when it's on flat ground, this tank is very easy to penetrate, both through the sides, through the frontal hull, and when you get the side of the turret, you can also pin it there very, very easily. You can also pin the back of the turret and the rear of the tank with HE, and you can pin the sides of the tank with higher pin, HE, coming from TDs and whatnot, because the side of the tank is only 80 millimeters thick. Now, in a situation like this, where you have support from your team, the Kranvagn is actually very, very deadly, and it is hard to get rooted out from the position that you put yourself in. As you can see right now, I am holding my first shell, and I'm rushing the Jagdpanzer since he has already fired, and I can go ahead, use the 2 shells that I've loaded to go ahead and remove the Jagdpanzer from the game. And with the support of Emerald and the Sheridan, we're going to be able to deal with the E75 quite easily. When playing the Kranvagn solo, however, you have to take a different approach to the game. When playing it solo, you need to put yourself in an aggressive position with options to fall back and retreat to, in case the enemy team decides to get aggressive with you. And when you're playing in a platoon, you can usually expect your platoon mate to give you some sort of covering fire to keep the enemy tanks from rushing you down. And that's what you want to focus on doing when you're playing the Kranvagn. You want to sit there and try to get those 3-for-1 shots that you normally get with autoloaders, trading 3 shots in where the enemy can only hit you with 1. You want to give yourself cover and a retreat option, and you want to sit there and try to get covered by your team the majority of the time. Like, for instance, in this game, I did go up to the hill to act as a deterrent for the enemy tanks approaching the hill and spotting our TDs, but I did stay within line of sight of my own TDs and my Sheridan driver. That kept me alive, that kept me from getting pushed to the point where I would be overwhelmed. And because of that pre-planning, we were able to get out a very significant amount of damage, about 4k, and we were able to block a significant amount of damage as well because nobody was able to push far enough to where they could shoot my lower plate. And this was a very easy game to clutch out with my platoon mate and the friendly E50. We were able to deal with the flanking grill and the flanking T-54E1 because of that timely push on the Jagdpanzer and the E75, and that's all because I was able to manage my shells. I managed my shell loading, gave myself 2 shells to deal with the Jagdpanzer, and my friendly Sheridan was able to go ahead and back me up with the E75, and then we were able to turn our attention towards the rest of the team. Now, I haven't played the Kranvagn a ton since it's been released. I think I have a pretty good feel for the tank, and I do enjoy the playstyle. But I'll tell you somebody else who has played the tank quite a bit over the last few days while Discord streaming for the rest of our clan, and that is my man, Jurdles. He absolutely loves this tank, and he's been playing it non-stop, constantly over the past few days. He got this game not too long ago, I want to say it was a day or two ago, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity to go over another side of the Kranvagn that nobody gets to see too often, and that is somebody who actually prefers loading in more shells in the auto-reloader in order to deal with enemy tanks. Jurdles' playstyle is a lot different than mine. I prefer to use the Kranvagn as a one-shot vehicle, and then when I have the time, I load in the extra shells and use it as a clipper. But Jurdles likes to load in the extra shells because it increases his effective fighting DPM in the moment. And he has taken the Kranvagn to the medium side of Castilla here, which is a little strange, because usually you see the heavies go to the heavy side, the mediums go to the medium side, and the TDs go to the camping bushes or the camping ridges in the beginning there. But Jurdles is bringing the Kranvagn over to the medium side, which I think will go decently, I want to say, because he has that 9 degrees of gun depression and the really strong turret. Now, there's always a chance that he could get shot from the heavy side, depending on who goes hill over there, because of the Kranvagn's weaker turret side armor. Now, I will say that this is still a really strong play for the Kranvagn, because if he does go Hulldown here, the STB-1 and the Sheridan are going to have no chance of pinning him in this spot. He is too close to the enemy medium tanks for the Sheridan to go ahead and curve the missiles effectively into the lower plate, and the STB-1 does not have the penetration to go through the upper hull or the turret. And as I said in the first game when I was talking about ways to make this tank succeed, Jurdles is giving himself an escape option, and he is still being covered by his TDs and heavy tanks on the right side of the map. So if these medium tanks do rush him down, they will be getting hit from the friendly team members, and he also has his platoon mate backing him up. So these players have already set themselves up for success over here on the castle side of Castilla. And as you can see, they're pressing their advantage onto the enemy STB-1. And as you can see, the STB-1 might have good gun depression, but it's still not able to deal with that upper hull armor. And I guarantee you, the STB-1 was trying to shoot the lower plate, but that position is a bit too tenuous for it to use that gun depression to be able to depress it enough to hit the lower plate. And as you can see, Jurdles doesn't need to rush here, but he's going to go ahead and take care of the STB-1. And the only tank that is left that is really going to be a threat to him is the Sheridan and the Leopard 1 behind him. The Leopard 1 made kind of a bad play there, and he scraped the side of the Kranvagn, and there is no chance of him getting away now, because the friendly Progetto is already in hot pursuit, and Jurdles has already loaded a final shell into his clip, dealing with the 2 medium tanks, leaving the single light tank. And right now, this is sort of a dream scenario for the Kranvagn, because with the 2 medium tanks dealt with and the light tank being pressured away from the castle side, Jurdles is free to reload all the shells in his clip and start providing some supporting fire for the friendly team into those heavies that are starting to be aggressive towards them. And right now, since he is not being spotted, there is no risk of return fire. And since this is an auto-reloading tank, he not only can get a clip into these tanks, but he can also go ahead and reload single shells after, which is theoretically better DPM than you would normally find on autoloaders or technically single-shot tanks. Right now, Jurdles doesn't have a clear shot on that Kranvagn, but he can shoot through the buildings, through the B cap, all the way into the C cap. And one thing I failed to mention so far is that Kranvagn actually has insane heat penetration. I believe it's up there near 375, sort of just like the IS-4. This thing can pin a lot of tanks in game with calibrated shells, and I definitely recommend you run calibrated over vents, because you get very, very little benefits from vents, whereas you're able to pin the majority of all the tanks in the entire game with calibrated shells. So it's up to you. In my opinion, I would still rather run calibrated over vents. Anyway, Jurdles is losing a few of his teammates, so he's going to go ahead and start making his way towards the enemy team. All the while, that clip is reloading, meaning that he is going to have 3 shells available when he does get in firing range of one of these enemy red tanks. And at this point, we kind of have to rely on our teammates, both the Progetto that's in the platoon with us and the Object 268 that was supporting us from the hill. We don't want to lose all our health now, but we have all of our shells loaded, so we are able to be aggressive on any tank that is caught out. For instance, the Sheridan, even though he was able to pin us in the lower plate, we're going to be able to get in 3 shells, and he's only going to be able to shoot us 1 time. Potentially, he could shoot us 1 more time, but when you face hug or you get close to the Kron, it becomes very, very difficult to pin. And as you can see, the Sheridan, instead of finishing him off with a heat shell or just shooting into the lower plate with APCR, chose to go ahead and fire HE, and it low rolled. That leaves the Object 268 on about a 3-shot right now for the enemy team. And luckily enough, our 268, even though he died, provided enough of a distraction for Droodles to go ahead and back up into cover and safely reload 3 of those shells. Now, Droodles does have to play this a little bit safe, seeing as he can be HE'd and killed, but I'm not sure the Object 268 knows that. So we're just going to go ahead and see how this plays out between the two of them. Obviously, the 268 is not going to have a very clear shot on the turret, and Droodles is able to go ahead and get a shell into the cupola there of the 268. And because the Object 268 has about a 12.6 second reload, Droodles is fully able to go ahead and shoot all 3 shells right through the 268 with heat and finish off a very, very nice 7.2k game. This was on the Hall of Fame for just a little while before somebody got a 9k on EU. So I want to say congratulations to Droodles, and I hope you guys enjoyed this Kranvagn review. I'll have the Emil 1 and the Emil 2 review coming up soon, and I hope you guys are looking forward to that. Make sure to like and subscribe, and if you want to join my Discord, the link is in the description. And I will see you guys in the next one.
I still see your shadows in my room. Can't take back the love that I gave you. It's to the point